What's going on, my babies? Welcome back to another episode of The Spiritual Word. As always, I apologize for any noises in the background in advance and anything of that nature. And before I start these, I like to start these off with a disclaimer by stating that these are for entertainment purposes only. Always do your own research to come to your own conclusions, to have your own answers, to make your own decisions. And I believe in your ability to do so. And I already said I apologize for any noises in the background in advance. So, getting into this, it's extremely hot, and I turned off my fan so you guys don't hear the buzzing in the background, but I'm going to be dying throughout this, so I will be taking sips from this drink. So, if I pause, that's why. So, let's get into today's episode. So, last week I ended off by doing a spirituality for dummies instead of finishing this book, but instead of doing that, we're going to finish this book not all in one day. I still have a couple more chapters to go, so we're going to do chapter 20 in today's episode. And as always, before I start these, I have an audio version of the podcast and a video version of the podcast. Audio is on all streaming podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever you prefer. And the video version is on YouTube. They're both named The Spiritual Word. I'm your host, Jackie. I upload Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Mountain Time, except for the last week of every month, which I actually think that this is the last week of this month, but I figured that we might as well get this book done. And normally this is my break week, but I figured it's okay to skip this month and we can just, continue going back to the normal schedule next month. So, or I might take the week after this week. Depends on how I feel. So, we're going to get into chapter 20. We have been reading Start Where You Are by Pema Chodron. So we're going to be continuing to read that. Today's chapter, The Big Squeeze. So let's get into this. If we want to communicate and have a strong aspiration to help others on the level of social action, on the level of our family, at work in our community, or we just want there to be for people when they need us, they sooner or later are going to expect the big squeeze. Our idea and the reality of what's really happening don't match. We feel as if we're between the fingers of a giant who's squeezing us. We find ourselves between a rock and a hard place. There's often a discrepancy. There's often a discrepancy between our ideals and what we actually encounter. For instance, with raising children, we have a lot of good ideas, but sometimes it's very challenging to put together all the good ideas with the ways that our children actually are. They're at breakfast table with food all over themselves, or with meditation. Have you noticed how difficult it actually feels? It is to actually feel an emotion without getting totally swept up by them, or how difficult it is simply to cultivate friendliness towards yourself when you're completely miserable or panicked or caught up. There's a discrepancy between our aspiration and the situation that presents itself. The immediacy of the situation. It's the rub between those two things. The squeeze between reality and vision. That causes you to grow up and wake up to be 100% decent, alive, and compassionate. The big squeeze is one of our most productive places in the spiritual path, and this in particular in this journey of awakening the heart. It's worth talking about because we find ourselves in a hard place again and again. Usually we want to run away. Sometimes we want to give up on the whole thing. But it's like burnout. It feels completely uncomfortable. You can't wiggle out of it. It's like a dog that gets its teeth in your arm and you can't shake it off. 100 Times of the big squeeze feel like a crisis period. We have the aspiration to wake up and to help. At the same time, it doesn't seem to work out in our terms. It feels impossible for us to buy our situations, and it's also impossible to throw them out. Being caught up in the big squeeze humbles you, and sometimes it has great vision. This is the interesting part. It softens you, and yet it has big perspective. Through meditation practice, we learn to not reject, but also to not grasp. This is the same paradox that we are presented with in our lives. It's not so much that we don't reject, or sometimes that you find you can't do either, but you do both at the same time. I was invited to teach in a situation with Sawang Trogon Rinpoche's eldest son. And it wasn't exactly clear what my situation was. Sometimes I was treated as a big deal who should come in through a special door and sit in a special seat. Then I'd think, okay, I'm a big deal. I'd start to run with the idea and come up with big deal notions and how things should be. Then I'd get a message back, oh no. You should sit on the floor and mix with everybody and just be one with the crowd. And then, okay. So now the message that I was just ordinary, to not set myself up or be the teacher. But as soon as I was getting comfortable or being humbled, I would be asked something special, or other than that only big deal did. That thing that, or the other, that only big deals did. This was a painful experience because I was insulted and humiliated by my own expectations. As soon as I'd show up how it should be, I felt so secure. I would get the message that it should be the other way. Finally, I said to Wang, this is really hurting. I just don't know who I'm supposed to be. He said, well, you have to learn to be a big deal and a small at the same time. I think that's the point. We all get uncomfortable either being big or small, either right or wrong. Although we think that wrong is bad, if we get in the habit of thinking that we are wrong, that can be quite uncomfortable. That could be quite comfortable. Any ground will do. We just want to be able to get on our own ground, either as a loser or as a winner or as a big deal or an ordinary deal. But we wish to communicate. If we really wish to open our hearts sooner or later, we're going to find ourselves in the big squeeze, where you can't throw it out. We're all caught up in this juicy situation of being a big deal or a small deal at the same time. Life is glorious, but life is also wretched. It is both. Appreciating the glamorous inspires us, encourages us, it cheers us up, and gives us a bigger perspective, energizes us. We feel connected. But if that's all that's happening, we get ignorant, we start to look down on others, and there's a sense of making ourselves a big deal and being really serious about it, wanting it to be that forever. The glamorous becomes a trigger by craving and addiction. On the other hand, wretchedness, life's painful aspects, softens us up considerably. Knowing pain is a very important ingredient for being there for another person. When we feel there's a lot of grief, you can look out to somebody with those eyes because you feel you haven't gotten anything to lose. You're just there. The wretchedness humbles us and softens us. But if we're only wretched, we would go down the tubes. We would just all go down the tubes. We'd be so depressed, discouraged, hopeless, and we wouldn't have energy to eat an apple. Glorious and wretchedness need each other. one inspires us and one softens us. They go together. Today's slogans are the instructions on how to communicate from the heart. The emphasis is on how to keep one's heart open for the juicy and richness and for hold on. The emphasis is on how to keep one's heart open for the juiciness and the richness of the big squeeze. One slogan is which two occurs. Whichever of the two occurs, sorry. The slogan is whichever of the two occurs, be patient. Whether it's glamorous or wretched, delightful or hateful, be patient. Patient means allowing things to unfold at their own speed rather than jumping in with your habitual responses of either pain or pleasure. The real happiness that underlies both glamorous and wretchedness often gets short-circuited by our jumping too fast into the same habitual pattern. Patience is not learned in safety. It is not learned when everything is harmonious and going well. When everything is smooth sailing, who needs patience? If you stay in your room with the door locked and the curtains drawn, everything may seem harmonious, but the minute anything doesn't go your way, you blow up. There is no cultivation of patience when your patterns is to just try to seek harmony and smooth everything out. Patience implies willingness to be alive rather than to seek harmony, rather than trying to seek harmony. A hermit, well known for their austerity, austerity, I can't. Austerity had been practicing in a cave for 22 years, and an unconventional teacher named Patrul Rinpoche showed up to the cave. The hermit humbly, sweetly welcomed him, and Patrul Rinpoche said, "Tell me what you've been doing here." "I've been practicing the perfection of patience," the hermit answered. Putting his face very close to the hermit's face, Patrul Rinpoche said, "But a pair of old scoundrels like us, we don't care anything about patience, really. We only do this to get everyone's admiration, right? We just do this to get people to think that we're big shots, don't we?" The hermit started to get irritated, but Patrul Rinpoche wouldn't stop, and he kept laughing and patting him on the back and saying, "Yeah, sure, we sure know how to do people, don't we? We really know. I'll bet you bring a lot of gifts. I bet you they bring you a lot of gifts, don't they?" At the point, the hermit stood up and screamed, "Why did you come here? Are you tormenting me? Go away, leave me in peace." And the Rinpoche said, "So now, where's your perfection of patience?" So that's the point. We create this ideal situation in which we have very high opinions of ourselves. But how do we do when it comes to the big squeeze? The next slogan, don't be swayed by the external circumstances. If something is glamorous or even slightly pleasant, you should say, "Wow, I want that." Hold on, sorry, let me reread that. The next slogan, don't be swayed by the external circumstances. If something is glamorous or even slightly pleasant, you say, "Wow, I want that." If it's wretched or even slightly irritating, you say, "I want out of it." The point is that challenges don't cease. If you wish to keep your heart open, and the challenges will quickly increase rather than decrease, harmony may seem as a distant hope. Lest you be hard on yourself about being swayed by the external circumstances, keep in mind the story of Shakyamuni Buddha. Just before the moment of his enlightenment, all the external circumstances came to try and sway him right in front of the daughter of Mara. Mara symbolizes the ways we have looked for alternatives to being where we are. Mara symbolizes the way we have been looking for symbolizes the way that we have of looking for our alternatives to being where we are. Just before he was enlightened, every kind of idea occurred to the Buddha. It was as if every challenge in the book came up. On that evening, what was difficult was that he simply held his seat, opened his heart to whatever might arise, didn't shut down, and was fully there. Lest you feel bad for yourself. Not being swayed by the external circumstances is a total experience. Not being swayed by external circumstances as a total experience is called enlightenment. The slogan, don't don't vacillate, vacillate. I don't know what that means. Very much go along with very much going along with not being swayed by the external circumstances. Whatever arises, you keep your heart open. Beyond that, you can't keep shutting down or closing off to these as many opportunities to wake up, spinning off of the things that are painful or pleasant. Presence is an opportunity to practice Lojong. You have good instructions on what you want to do with pain. Breathing it in, becoming more intimate, making friends with it. You have the instructions for what you want to do with pleasure, sending it out, giving it away what you are most unwilling to lose. In this way, we begin to know the pain of others and wish for others to have happiness, using the joy and pleasures of our lives as not a problem, but as a tool to benefiting others. The next slogan, don't expect applause, which means don't expect thanks. This is important. When you open the door and invite all sentient beings to be your guest, when you invite all sentient beings as your guests, it's not only that, but it's also you opening the windows and walls even starting to fall down. You find yourself in the universe with no protection at all. Now you're good for it. Think if you think that you're just doing, hold on, let me reread that. If you think that just by doing that you're going to feel good about yourself and you are going to be thanked right and left, no, that won't happen. More than expect thanks. It would be helpful to just expect the unexpected. When you might be curious and inquisitive about what comes through the door, we can begin to open our hearts to others when we have no hope to get anything back. We should just do it for its own sake. On the other hand, it's good to express our gratitude with others. It's helpful to express our appreciation with others. But if we do that with the motivation of wanting them to like us, we can just remember this slogan. We can thank others, but we should give up all hope of being thanked back. Simply keep the door open without any expectations. There's also this slogan that says, don't misinterpret. Don't mispose the wrong notions of what harmony is, what compassionate is, what patience is, what generosity is. Don't misinterpret what these things really are. There is compassion, and there's being an idiot compassion. Hold on, there is idiot compassion. There's patience, there's also idiot patience. There's generosity, there's also idiot generosity. For example, trying to smooth everything out to avoid confrontation or to not rock the boat means you're is not meant by compassion or patience. It's meant by control. When you're trying to step into the unknown territory and find yourself more naked, with less protection, therefore more contact with reality, instead you use idiot forms of compassion. Hold on, I didn't understand that. I need to reread that. There is compassion and there is idiot compassion. There is patience and idiot patience. There is generosity and idiot generosity. For example, trying to smooth everything out to avoid confrontation, not to rock the boat, is not what's meant by compassion or patience. That is what is meant by control. Then you are not trying to step into an unknown territory. You find yourself more naked with less protection, therefore more contact with reality. Instead, you use the idiot form of compassion, and so forth you get ground, where you open the door and invite all sentient beings as your guest. You drop the agenda. Many different people come in. Just when you think that you've had little schemes that is going to work, it doesn't work. It was very beneficial to Juan. But when you tried it on the Mortimer, he looked at you as if you were crazy. When you tried it on Juanita, she gets insulted. Coming up with a formula won't work if you invite all sentient beings as your guest while just wanting harmony. Sooner or later, you'll find that one of your guests behaves badly and is just sitting. Hold on. One of your guests behaves badly and just sitting there cheerfully doing Toglin, trying to cultivate harmony doesn't work. You can sit there and say, okay, now I'm going to be friends with the fact that I'm hurting and afraid. And this is really awful. You are just trying to avoid conflict here. And just don't want anything to get worse. Then all your guests are misbehaving. You work hard all day and sit around smoking cigarettes, drinking beer, eating food, then beating you up. You think that you're being a warrior and a bodhisattva by doing nothing and saying nothing. But what you're doing is being a coward. You're just afraid of making the situation worse. Finally, they kick you out of your own house. And you're sitting there on the sidewalk. Somebody walks by and says, "What are you doing out here?" And you answer, "I'm practicing patience and compassion." That's missing the point. Even when you've dropped your agenda, even when you're trying to work with the situation instead of struggling against it, nevertheless, you may have to say, "You can stay here tonight, but tomorrow you're going. If you don't get out of there, I'm calling the police." You don't really know what's going to be a benefit to somebody, but it doesn't benefit anybody to allow someone to beat you up, to eat your food, and to put you out on the street. So don't misinterpret. Really gets the notion of the big squeeze. It's saying that you don't know what's going to help, but you need to speak and act clearly and decisively. Clarity and decisiveness come from the willingness to go slow, or from the willingness to slow down, to listen and to look what's happening. They come from opening the heart, not from running. When the action and speech are in accord with what's needed to be done, for you or for the other person. Hold on. The action and the speech are in accord with what's needed, with what needs to be done for you or the other person. We make a lot of mistakes. If you ask people whom you consider to be wise and courageous about their lives, you might find that they have hurt a lot of people and made a lot of mistakes. But they use those on occasions as opportunities to humble themselves and to open their hearts. We don't get to be wise by staying in a room with all the doors and the windows closed. Train in the 3 difficulties. My favorite slogan, because it acknowledges the fact that this path is difficult. All right. But it's a good way to spend our time. These 3 difficulties, the first is seeing the neurosis as neurosis, the second is being willing to do something different, and the third is the aspiration to make this a way of life. Seeing the neurosis as neurosis. The first difficulty is to see what you do, and there's a slogan that goes with this: liberate yourself by examining and analyzing. This is an interesting point, to be able to see what we do without hating ourselves. This can also be as a description of what Maitri, loving kindness. We could see what we do honestly, but with gentleness. We could see what we do and realize that our first experience of the big squeeze in this path of warrior is seeing what we do without turning against ourselves. Where am I? The slogan, liberate yourself by examining and analyzing, simply means, as with the slogan, don't be jealous, don't be furious, don't wallow in self-pity at the first steps you see. The first steps is to see yourself jealous, to see yourself furious, to see yourself lowing in self-pity. You think to yourself, well, what would Dr. Seuss do in this situation? Instead of using it as an ammunition against yourself, you can lighten up and realize that this is information that you need in order to keep your heart open. If anybody on the planet could experience seeing what they do with gentleness, everything would start to turn around very, very fast, even if we didn't get to the second difficulty. The second difficulty is to do something different. Even if you see what you do, you can then do something different. If you're jealous, you can snap your fingers and no longer be jealous. We know it's more difficult than that. You're sitting there having a boyfriend sitting across the room with someone else, having a really good time, and you're getting more and more jealous and furious by the minute. Then there's a little bird on your shoulder who says, okay, here's your big chance. You could use this to wake up, and you can say, forget it, he's really a creep, and want to be mad at him. He deserves my anger. Now the little bird jumps down and says, hey. Don't you remember? You're saying, I don't believe this stuff. I am jealous. I am right to be jealous. He is horrible. There you are. And the bird jumps up again and says, come on. Give yourself a break. You don't know this stuff. Drop the storyline. Forget it. You say, boy, you're stubborn. That's what I find about myself. Even when we're given the methods of how to break ourselves, of how to give ourselves a break, we are so stubborn. If we're smoking, it's hard to give up. Trying to give up your habitual patterns. It leaves you with some kind of queasy feeling that you have when you've given up an addiction. But sometimes, you know what? Anyways, I'm going to reread that because I can't. That's what I find about myself. Even when we're given the methods for how to give ourselves a break, we're so stubborn. If you think smoking is hard to give up, try giving up your habitual patterns. It leaves you with the same kind of queasy feeling that you have when giving up any other addiction. So instead of liberating yourself by examining and analyzing the habitual response, you can try response to see yourself clearly. And seeing yourself clearly is to take the wrong medicine. You inflame the jealousy. You swallow more self-pity. You speed up the ferocity. Usually we do this by talking to ourselves. It's like a bellow fanning a fire. A bellow fanning a fire. We just sit there and we have fantasies about our boyfriends leaving the party with our friends. We talk about ourselves and how it's hopeless and how we feel like this and how we feel like it's never going to get better. Something difficult, such as Toglin. Anything different helps. Anything that's not the habitual pattern. For example, we could go up and take a cold shower and sing at the top of our lungs or drink a glass of water from the wrong side like you do when you're trying to get rid of hiccups. Continuing that way. But even when you see what you do, even if you do something different, the third difficulty the third difficulty is that it's difficult to continue that way, to cut the habitual pattern as a way of life. So whenever you see yourself spinning off in some kind of habitual way, you could aspire to catch yourself and to try to do something a different way. Cultivating compassion for yourself, cultivating passions for others, but don't be surprised or give up when it's difficult. The slogan that encourages practicing these three difficulties is the two activities, one at the beginning, one at the end. In the beginning of your day, when you wake up, express your aspirations. May I practice the three difficulties. May I see what I do when it's happening. When it happens, may I do something different. And may that be the way of life for me. At the beginning of your day, using your own language, you could encourage yourself to keep your heart open and remain curious no matter how difficult things get. When you get to the end of your day, as you're just about to go to sleep, review your day rather than using what happened as ammunition for feeling bad about yourself and about the whole day went. Or how you went about the whole day and never noticed or remembering what you aspired to do in the morning. You can simply use it as an opportunity to get to know yourself better and see all the funny ways in which you trick yourself, all the ways in which you are so good at zoning out and shutting down. You could feel like you don't want to practice the three difficulties anymore because it's like setting yourself up for failure. Generate a kind heart towards yourself. Reflect over one day's activity. Reflecting over just one day's activities can be painful, but you might end up respecting yourself more because you see a lot happening. You aren't just one way. As Carl Jung said at the end of his life, I'm astonished, disappointed, pleased with myself. I am distressed, depressed, rapturous. I am these things at once and cannot add up the sum. So that's the big squeeze. Although you listen to all these teachings, you have all these practices as support. Sometimes, somehow, it has to become real for you. It has to be digested by you. The teachings and the practices, like orange juice concentrate, that thick orange stuff in the can. And life is just like water. You have to mix it all up together. And when you have good orange juice, you can bring out that big pitcher for everyone to drink. And though it may come out of a can, you know that it's truly freshly squeezed. I'm sorry, that was kind of difficult. Anyways, I really like this one because I literally was practicing that today. So normally, I don't know if it's like ADHD or whatever, or ADD, because I don't think I have the hyper part of ADHD, but I normally am freaking out because I'm not on time to things. Like, if I'm not on time to things, I am freaking out, especially if I'm waiting for somebody or if I have somebody else waiting on me. Then I panic so hard. And today I went to go get my hair cut. And after getting my hair cut, I was only supposed to be cutting my hair for like an hour, but it almost took me 2 full hours to cut my hair just because my cousin actually cut my hair and we didn't start until like 30 minutes after I had gotten there. And I wasn't in a rush and I didn't sit there and be like, hey, I have somewhere to be, because it's not that serious. But I also had like a little work event, like a picnic for Memorial Day, because we're not open Memorial Day. So they did a picnic for all the employees and stuff like that. And I had already invited my mom and my little sister. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to hate me because, I'm not on time. I'm not on time. And I was getting my haircut and I looked at the time because I was freaking out. Like, the panic was starting to set in for me, where I was like, oh my gosh, like they're going to start, calling me or blowing up my phone talking about, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And as I was cutting my hair, I was like, you know what? It's fine. Like, this is what I told myself, was that I'm not late. It's divine timing. So it's not up to me to decide what time I get there. It's not up to me. It's up to my life, essentially. And rushing is not going to make me get there quicker because I'm already going to be late. You know what I mean? And this is the same thing for, like, obviously I don't condone being late. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't intentionally being late. And I think that was what I was kind of reminding myself, that I wasn't intentionally being late. Like, it wasn't something that I was purposefully doing. And I'm not going to rush this person who's cutting my hair because I want it to come out good. And I don't want, like gaps or like things to just not look right. And so I was like, okay. And I didn't, I wasn't panicking. I literally was going to text my little sister talking about, oh, I'm just going to be a little bit late. But they weren't really panicking. Like, nobody was calling or texting me. And I was like, okay, so no one's panicking. We're all good. Like, the only person who's panicking here is me. And as soon as I got done with my haircut, like, I drove home. I literally didn't even shower. I just rinsed my head. And I was like, you know what? Is everybody ready? And they're like, yeah, we've been ready. I was like, okay, I'm so sorry that I'm late. But nobody was panicking except for me. So in that moment when, like, the panic started to set in for me, I just sat there and I was like, you know what? And it wasn't something that, like, I stated out loud. It wasn't something like of that nature where I was like, oh, I'm going to be late, but it's fine. It was one of those moments where I was like, it's late, but it's not like I have to be there at this specific time. You know what I mean? Like, if I was late for work, then I'd be panicking. But it's just a picnic. Like, we were literally just having a meal. And it lasted a decent amount of time. Like, I'm pretty sure we were there until like 3. And so I was there from like 12 to 3, which is a good almost 4 hours. So I was like, you know what? I was freaking out for no reason. And today I was like, I want to practice patience. Like I said, that intention for myself. I want to practice patience and I want to be more patient. And I've been trying to do this at work because customers really irritate me because they try to finesse me. Like they'll be like, oh, I didn't get this, I didn't get this, I didn't get this. And I literally made sure that I gave that to them because I don't like when people complain or when they call my manager over because I'm like, oh my gosh, they're gonna, you know, like it makes me panic. And so I try to not have that happen. And I think because I try to have that happen so much, the universe is like, no, no, you are too careful when it comes to like controlling your situation, and you cannot control your situation. So I have a lot of customers come back and they're like, I didn't get this, I didn't get this, I didn't get this, I didn't get this. And I'm looking at them like, yes, you did. You're just trying to scam me out of some free food right now. It's not that deep. You just could, like, you know, I'm like, it's not that deep for them. And then I'm like, you know what? It's not that deep for me to give them whatever they're asking for because at the end of the day, it's not my company, you know? Like, but at the same time, I am an employee who is trying to go up, you know? So, like, there's a part of me that's like, I really want to care about, you know, what I'm giving away for free because I know they got this thing. And if they're coming back, this doesn't happen a lot, but I notice when it does happen because it bothers me. Because I'm like, why are you trying to get free food? It's not that deep. And, you know, most of the people who come into this restaurant, you have to have money because this shit's expensive. You know what I mean? Or if you know it's expensive and you know you can't pay for it, like, just say that. Like, I'm sure somebody here would be willing to pay for your food, even if it's me, you know? And that's what annoys me. Like the fact that you could just be honest about the situation, but instead you rather lie through the situation. And so that's what bothers me. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Like, I'm not going to let the situation bother me because it's not my place to worry about who's lying because it's not my position. Like, I'm still down here and the amount of fucks that I give is way up here. Like, I'm a low level employee and I act like I'm a high level employee because I care too much. And so in those situations where I'm like showing up that I care too much, I'm like, okay, you know what? It's good that I care. It's good that I care, but it's not my position to care. You know what I mean? Like, I can teach you all this spiritual knowledge. I can read you this book, but I can't do the work for you. And so I sit there, and in those moments, I'm like, okay, you know what? These people are going to be who they are, and it's not my job to teach them. It's not my job to, like, parent them. It's not my job to sit there and be like, oh, yeah, manager, let me snitch on this person because I'm pretty sure they got it, just in case I'm actually wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I'm fully prepared to be the wrong one in the situation. Like, maybe they finished that specific thing that they're asking for, or you know, maybe I really didn't give it to them and I'm sitting here thinking I did when I actually didn't. So I always just give them the stuff. And in the moments where it's like pissing me off, because that's a trigger for me. Like, it really irritates me when people are like, oh, you didn't give me this. And they're rude about it. You know what I mean? So when that happens, most of the time they're not like extremely rude, but they'll be like, I need another one. You didn't give me that, right? Because obviously their storyline is more important than my storyline. So I'm like, okay. It's not about the storyline. Let's just like make this person happy so they can move on with their day. And you know, the customer's always right bullshit. And you know, so I just give them their food, and in that moment I'm like, yeah, you know what? Why is this bothering me? Like, I'll literally, this is what I say in my head. I'm like, it's not that deep. Even though it obviously is deep to other people and others' lives and others' situations, but in my personal existence, it's not that deep. You know what I mean? Like, I just simply work here. And I'm not a boss, I'm not a manager. I'm a very low level employee. Even if I know somebody's stealing, what can I do about it? And even if somebody is stealing and I'm a manager, what can I do about it still? What would I want to do about it still? Because, you know, nowadays everybody has crazy things going through their mind, so caught up in this worldly existence that, it's a very sketchy place. Like, even if people are stealing, you can't really do anything because it's dangerous. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm like, it's not that deep. Like, I'm not gonna be out here risking my life for this place, And so I dropped the storyline because I'm like, it's not that deep. Like, I get it. It's not good to steal. It's not good to lie. It's not good to cheat. But when that is outweighing, or like when you're weighing against your physical life and that thing, your physical life is always going to win. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have road rage for the simple fact that people get shot over road rage. And I'm like, it's not that serious. Obviously, I do have moments where I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I do have moments like that. And I'm not fucking perfect. But when I have those moments, I try to use those moments as practice. And like, when people piss me off at work, I'm like, it's not that deep. And then I kind of like giggle to myself because I'm like, why was I so mad? And the same thing happens now when I do certain things like, for example, I'm working on using video games as another practice tool because I get so caught up in like the fact that like I always get the shittiest people to play with. Like, I myself am not the greatest, but when I am the best on the team, that's where I'm like, what's the point of playing this? And I have a lot of those moments. And I'm like, you know what? We're just playing to enjoy the game. And I try to reinforce that on myself, but sometimes it's just be hard. Like, I'm just a person. I just got here. So, yeah. Anyways, thanks for listening to my rant. And tomorrow we will be getting into what is this? 21, and it is called High Stakes Practice. Hi. And then we'll be doing 22. We might do both in one day, depending on how I feel, because I read kind of slow, so I don't like to take up too much time. But yeah, this episode was called The Big Squeeze. Tomorrow's episode is going to be High Stakes Practice. So I hope that this was helpful in any way, shape, and form. And as always, my babies, you know that I love you and I appreciate you for being here. And as you can tell, for the video viewers, obviously, I got a new background because I moved it around some stuff just to make room. And yeah, so I hope that that's nice to look at, even though you can't really see shit because I blur it. But yeah, and somebody said hi. I don't know if you can hear that sniffing, but thanks for tuning in and tapping in, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.